Well, it wasn't that long ago we had an election, and on election night, not only were people paying attention to what was happening as it was going to determine who our next president was going to be for the next 4 years, but on a number of states, they were actually looking at the issue of abortion as well. And joining us to talk a little bit about that and what happened that night is Kelsey Pritchard. She is the state public affairs director with the Susan B. Anthony Pro Life America, and Kelsey, for those of us who did not live in one of those states where abortion was on the ballot, this could have been something that wasn't necessarily on our radar screen. So, what was actually being voted on that night?
Yeah, there were 10 states that had abortion ballot measures, and these all were very extreme ballot measures that would allow abortion at any point in pregnancy. They would take away parental consent. They would also force taxpayers to fund abortions and even eliminate common sense regulations on the abortion industry that are designed to protect women and girls. And unfortunately, a number of them passed in and seven of 10 states they passed a bad abortion amendment, but we won three out of those states, and these were really huge wins in Florida, in South Dakota, and Nebraska, because these are states that have a pro-life law on the books. So having passed an amendment like that would reverse life-saving laws, and because those things went down, we have laws preserved that protect more than 51,000 children annually in this country. And now we have a model going forward of how we beat the abortion ballot measures in the future, because since the Dobbs decision, we've had a number of these fights, and these are the first ones that we've won. And now we have a roadmap, and just grateful that we know how to win, and that we'll be able to win these in the future.
Kelsey, I've been thinking a lot about just where we stand as a nation when it comes to protecting our unborn children, and the language that was the rhetoric that was part of this last election. Listening to people, voters say, I am voting because I want my daughter to be able to have an abortion. I want her to be able, and the daughter may be 10 years old right now. Just grieved me because I kept thinking about, if we were talking about aborting puppies, then the nation would be outraged. And we're
Mhm.
talking about aborting children, and we're not outraged. We're thinking, oh no, my daughter needs the right to an abortion at full term, because that was some of the rhetoric that we were looking at all the way to full term. Would that include after the baby is born? That's full term.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Trump did a really good job of this, of exposing how extreme the Democrats have become on the issue of abortion. And on the debate stage and in other places, he pointed out they have no limit that they support. Kamala supports no limit in the seventh, eighth, ninth month of pregnancy until birth. She doesn't even support a born alive protection. So if a baby survives an abortion, the Democrats as a whole do not support the policy of giving them life saving care and sustaining their life. They support letting those children die. And so it is hard to fathom. And just the way the Democrats have gone from safe, legal, and rare to abortion done by anyone, anytime, anywhere. And that is precisely what we were doing at Susan B. Anthony leading up to the election, was informing people where the Democrats have landed on this issue, letting moderates know, letting pro-life voters know what was at stake, and getting people to turn out to vote. And so we were in 8 battleground states. We invested $92 million in those states, and we talked to voters face to face, knocked on doors, and let them know just what was at stake. And thankfully, praise God, we had so many victories on election night, and that we're not looking at the potential of a Women's Health Protection Act that Kamala Harris would have signed, that would have banned states from having pro-life laws and required states to allow abortion until birth.
Kelsey, as you did go door to door and as you did interact with the American public, did you find that many were aware of the rhetoric? Many understood what was being spun and talked about, or was there a lot of ignorance kind of amongst the general populace?
I think there was a lot of education that we had to do, because people just, it's hard to grasp that this is where the Democrat Party is at now. They have essentially adopted the abortion industry's position. Now, of course, they have that position because they have a financial interest in being able to do abortion at any point and without any regulation whatsoever. And of course, there's money ties between the abortion industry and the Democrats. And to see some people react and say, wow, that's really where they're at. And to see votes and minds change right before our eyes. That's why we had such a big ground game this year. We saw it as crucially important because this, of course, was the first presidential election after the Dobbs decision. And now we have the ability to make a difference on the issue of life. And I think it's huge that the Democrats lost after pouring more than $500 million in TV ads on abortion alone and making this their number one issue. And the American people thankfully rejected that.
What did it look like, Kelsey, to go door to door? I mean, that seems so old school, but it was something that you saw as very important, and it seemed to have worked to educate people.
Yeah, it's been a big piece of our strategy for the past few elections. Susan B. Anthony is known for having a really big field program and field team. And a large part of our field team is comprised by students, college students, who are very passionate about the issue of life. And they're very efficient door knockers and very enthusiastic. They want to get out there and change hearts. They want to change the culture. And we know that it makes a difference. We know through these conversations, a lot of things can come up. Of course, you meet people who have really difficult or touching stories on the issue of abortion. You have women who are experiencing abortion regret. And so you never know what you're going to get when you knock on a door or who you're going to encounter exactly. And our field team is amazing. And they, God was with them as they were knocking on those doors and having those tough conversations. And I think the digital part of campaigning is important. Of course, digital ads and mailers and all of those kinds of things are very important. But you can't really replace face-to-face interaction in those conversations that our field team and other door knockers on across the country had leading up to the election.
As you kind of take a pulse on what's going on in our country right now, I've been hearing conflicting reports. Some people saying, no, we continue to drift more towards pro choice and abortion on demand. Others saying, no, we're starting to see the pendulum swing maybe back the other direction a little bit and the temperature, rising a little bit more in the pro life direction. What do you think? Where are we?
I would say our country is more pro life than the mainstream media would have anyone believe. And the kind of media bias that we've seen this election, really since the Dobbs decision, is unprecedented. And the way that they have become like the PR wing of the abortion industry, it's just insane. And I think now we have to think of the last 50 years and what has happened under Roe and how the abortion industry and abortion lobby, they've really grabbed a hold of the culture. They've really dominated the narrative for many decades and really getting people to believe that the baby in the womb is not a baby at any point until that baby is born, and to dismiss science, of course, all throughout that. And so we do have a lot of work to do to change hearts and minds. We do have a lot of work politically, as we've seen some Republicans run away from this issue because they're listening to the mainstream media. They're listening to the consultant class that say you shouldn't touch the issue of life. But I think there's a lot of momentum. And I think the victories in Florida and South Dakota and Nebraska, the victories we just had at the national level, that's giving us momentum, and we have to keep pushing on. This is the beginning of the fight. It is not the end, and we have a lot of work left to do in the next decade.
Let's talk, Kelsey, a little bit about what the Republican Party or the pro-life party, if you will. I think they're equated most often. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking at abortion and making the choice of abortion, and you are part of the Republican Party, is there a limit? Are they thinking, okay, it's okay? Because it seems like it came out, I was reading something that PBS put out that at the national convention this year, they came out with a little bit different language when it comes to more of a pro-abortion stance. It's still limited. It seems to be in the first trimester. Are there things that we need to be aware of as we're looking at that kind of rhetoric as well?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Democrat Party is no longer pro-choice. They are the pro-abortion party. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that some people in the Republican Party who are GOP leaders have kind of started to cross the line or go into a little bit of pro-choice territory. And some of them, I think, are well-meaning and haven't thought through some of this. They say states' rights on the issue of abortion, failing to recognize that the U.S. is one of 8 nations in the world that allows abortion all the way until birth. That puts us on that list with China. And so that's why we believe we need to have some sort of national minimum protection. And we believe the starting point could be 15 weeks. That's when science shows a baby can feel pain. And then states should protect life sooner and have more life-saving laws on the books. But you're right. Unfortunately, we've seen the Republicans run away from this issue too much. That is not politically smart. That is political suicide. And the smart thing to do is to be out front on this issue, because if you're not, the Democrats will mischaracterize you and they will demonize you as the extreme one when they have become the extreme ones on this issue. You need to be clear about where you stand on the issue of life. You need to expose where the Democrats are, and you need to contrast your opinion and your view on this issue with the way the abortion lobby sees things, because this our side is the compassionate side, and we need to talk that way, explain how we're the movement not only for unborn children but also for their mothers as well.
You know, Kelsey, one of the things that I've kind of struggled with some of that language is that it seems as if there are some in the political landscape who have said, well, as long as we stay on the more conservative side of whatever the Democrat Party or platform is, we've got half the nation's votes right there. So we can continue to drift towards a more pro-choice position, because as long as we still say, well, we're better than them, that drift is continuing to happen. Do you ever see a day where, people finally kind of say, enough is enough, forget the drift, we need to take a stand for life?
Yeah, I think our GOP leaders need to understand that that is a threat, and that the pro-life movement, pro-life voters all across this country, this is the number one issue for a lot of Americans on the Republican side. And people are very passionate about this. Why? Because it's life and death. Literally, we have the ability to save lives now, thanks to the Dobbs decision. And to see this cowardice from some Republicans drifting away, listening to the consultants, and not really understanding what is politically smart on this issue, it's very concerning. And so it's amongst our number one priority right now is to make sure the Republican Party remains the pro-life party, and the pro-life movement can make sure that happens. We can be vocal, we can encourage our elected officials to stand strong for life and voice our support, because of course what our elected officials hear on any given issue is the negative voices. They hear the abortion lobby, they hear the women, the Code Pink people chanting in the street, right? We need to voice our support and encouragement to them and strengthen them so that they can have more resolve, they can stand on the issue of life, because of course this is going to cost lives, whether we stand up and continue this fight or we retreat.
Standing on the issue of life and looking at the ability to continue to save lives and hence our country. I mean, these are people that would be living here, growing here, being part of the fabric of our society that we're losing to abortion. But Kelsey, as we think about what could happen down the road, parental rights could be something that are even more challenged than they're becoming right now. But what in that area are we fearful of if we have kind of a carte blanche abortion in every state?
Yeah, I think parental rights is a huge concern, and we saw this in Montana, and they recently got rid of their parental rights law, and because the abortion industry sued, and we know that's their game plan through ballot measures and just through litigation generally, and that is so extreme. That is generally not what pro-choice people even support, because we're talking about our daughters who we send to school, and if they're going to have Tylenol at school, we have to fill out forms of, probably a couple pages of forms. And yet our daughters could go and have an abortion without us ever knowing and ever having a say in it. And that's wild. That is truly extreme. And I think it's something we all need to be on guard of and aware of, not only the pro-life community, but those in the middle, people who care about parental rights in general. And we know they're also going after these very simple health and safety requirements. Again, in Montana, we're seeing this. They had these rules in place for lit exit ways. making sure that staff was trained in resuscitation, anyone who works in an abortion facility, hospital admitting privileges, things like that. And they sued. And they're arguing that we can't even have those simple things in place because of the radical amendment they passed. So we need to understand that the abortion lobby's game plan is all or nothing. They're going to go for all of it. They're going to try to get rid of every regulation on their industry. They're going to try to force taxpayers to fund abortion. And we have to expose how extreme they are because the American people as a whole don't support those things.
You did a great job of getting out into some of those battleground states and really taking, in a sense, the fight to the street and educating people. And during an election cycle, it's easy to see how people could be excited and galvanized to get behind that. But in the next 4 years or in the next 3.5 years, what would you like to see the people who care about life do? How could we get involved? How can we begin to make a difference?
I think we need to start backing candidates who express that they support life and who are very passionate about this issue and who we know are pro-life. And so we're already, of course, looking at the midterms. We're looking at the next presidential election. I think we all need to make that a priority and be involved in our elections at the state level, our elections at the national level. And we need to continue to be a force and even more of a force. We're not going to go away, and Republicans need to know that. And as we look at primaries and things like that, we need to come together to support the pro-life candidates. We need to encourage pro-life leaders in our life to run for office and to get out there. Because of course people run for office, often have these really good intentions of, I want to make my community better. I want to serve the people of my state. Well, what better thing could you do than to save lives? And so they need to understand that the unborn child is a child, and that we as the pro-life movement are going to continue to advocate for them and fight for them. And we need our Republicans to do so as well.
Kelsey, are there things on the local level other than supporting a candidate that people could do to make sure that that pro-life ability is still available to all of us? Because there are folks that are dealing with this every day. It's not in the political landscape. It's not a big headline to them. It is a very personal headline. How can we help that individual person?
Yeah, I would say pregnancy centers are so key, right? They are the hands and feet of the pro-life movement. They're the ones who come alongside women when they have an unexpected pregnancy. They not only help them when they're pregnant, but after a child is born. And so finding our local pregnancy centers, supporting them financially, praying for them, going and volunteering for them, asking them what they need and how we can support them and how they can grow their reach and ability to help people. That is so key at every aspect of this fight. And so think and pray about how God would use you and at your local level and with the people in your life, whether you know somebody who maybe is going through an unplanned pregnancy, and the ways that you can be a blessing to that woman.
We very often may tend to think of the abortion debate as a largely political battle, maybe even a social battle. How much of this do you think might be a spiritual battle?
Oh, it's 100% a spiritual battle. Sadly, the devil, he hates our children. He wants to kill our children, and the easiest way to do that is through abortion. And I think he just delights in the way that this issue has been misrepresented by the abortion industry, and the way that too many people in this country don't believe that this is a human being in the womb and a human being made in God's image, and that God knows them and knows everything about them, knows their name. And we all have to be on our knees. We have to be asking for miracles, begging God to move in this fight and continue to move and to not forget our nation. This is really the greatest human rights violation of our time. And, just as Bonhoeffer made a difference in his time, we need to be like him in this age. And we need to continue this battle for life. I know it's scary. I know it's hard. I know cancel culture seems pretty real still, and there's a social price to pay when you speak out on this issue because of the forces against us. But what an honor to be a part of God's plan in restoring things. What an honor to fight for the defenseless. And the reward we get for that, and just knowing that we're a part of that fight, is just so much greater than the cost.
It is. It's greater than the cost. It supersedes really the political. I mean, it plays out in the political landscape, but it's so much bigger. Like you said, it is completely spiritual. And as we were talking about this and knowing we were going to talk to you, I told Steve, I said, it just makes me so ill to think about, like, even in scripture, when the people were giving their babies over to the god of Molech and they were
Mhm.
sacrificing them, thinking that it was going to make everything better for them. And your heart breaks for a woman or a couple that thinks this is the only way I can deal with this situation is to abort my baby. And yet, if we are pro life, we want to be on the ground with them walking through this situation because it is a life. And to make sure that we continue to get that messaging out. Kelsey, where did we lose the fact? Is it just the verbiage that we lost the sight that these are babies? Because when you want the baby, yay, everybody's excited. But when the baby is not necessarily planned, then all of a sudden, well, it's not a baby.
Yeah, I mean, slowly, I think every institution, every major institution in our society became pro-abortion, and um, we now they're more pro-abortion than ever. Now that there are things at stake because of the Dobbs decision, whether you're talking about the media or Hollywood or academia, or now many of our major corporations and C-suites in this country, they are now pro-abortion, and so we are swimming against the tide, of course. And the abortion industry is good at this game. They have dominated the language. They have taken the language captive and the messaging, and they're really good at this PR game. They've been really good at it for a long time because they've been able to pay the best people because this is a business for them. They make so much money off of abortion, off of the lives of our children, off of pain and suffering of women and girls. And so they've been able to keep this thing going. But there's nothing that is too big for our God, and I know that we're not the side with the money. I know we're not the side with the institutional power, but we are fighting for a just cause. And if we are on our knees praying, asking God to move, we can have faith that He will move.
For many people, we may hear something like this. We may read beyond a headline and get into a story and think, okay, I want to do something. But for many of us, we don't know how to make a difference because it feels like David versus Goliath. It feels like one person against, as you said, all the money and all the media and everything. Feels like that uphill battle. Where do you
Mhm.
even start as a lone individual who says, I want to do something? I don't think God's asking me to run for office or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I want to do something. What's a good first step?
Yeah. Well, this is maybe too basic of an answer, but I think it's the only answer. I think you need to be on your knees and praying and ask God how He would move you, and He will. I remember watching the Unplanned movie, if you remember that, if you've seen that with Abby Johnson's story. And I had always cared about the issue of abortion. I had been involved years before. And when I saw that movie, it just re broke my heart. And I didn't know what I could do. I had just had my first child. I was trying to support my family financially as my husband was in dental school. I was like, what on earth can I do? And I just prayed and I just said, God, use me how you can use me. Show me where to go, what to do. I don't feel like I can do anything right now, but please use me in this fight. And He did. I didn't seek out the role that I'm in now, but He put it right in front of me. So I think that's going to look differently for each of us. But if we keep asking, if we keep saying, God, this breaks my heart. I know it breaks your heart. Use me however you would use me so that I can be one small piece of the answer to this and to this fight. He's going to move mountains. And it all starts with Him. It all starts with us asking what His will is and how we can be a part of this.
It's amazing what He'll do if we ask and then we listen for His response. And I would challenge us, Kelsey, too. Let's not even think about which political party that we're part of. Let's
Yeah.
not think about how we voted in this last election. Let's ask the Lord, what is important to your heart in these babies that you have created, you've given life to, breathed His own breath into each of us that have, life here on this side of eternity. and see what he says, because I think sometimes we get caught up in well, I'm a pro-life Republican, I'm a pro-life Democrat,
Yeah.
I'm a what independent. But let's lay those things aside. Do you find that helpful? Lay those labels aside and say, Lord, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, because I think we have in our mind, the way a solution can look, but God is so much bigger. He can see so many, he sees everything, obviously. And he might move in a way that we don't understand or don't yet know. And I think politics is part of the equation, but it's not everything. We need God to change hearts and minds, and it has to be so much bigger than just Republican, Democrat, left, right.
Yeah. Well, as you say, we need God to change hearts and minds, but God often works through means. He works through people, he works through organizations, he works through movements. He uses means. And the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America organization, one of the tools that he may be using to change hearts and minds, he did so in this past election cycle. What's next for you guys? As you said, with the midterms not that far off and another presidential election coming up in about 4 years, what is on the horizon for you?
Yeah, I mean, we're planning for those elections. We're looking where abortion could be on the ballot, preparing for the next presidential primary and elections. I think in the short term, we are also looking at what the Trump administration could do to undo some of the harm of the Biden administration. So, even just basic rolling back of some of these pro abortion administrative policies, even, of course, pardoning the people, they're pro life people who are in federal prison for demonstrating outside of abortion facilities and who are thrown into jail essentially for exercising their First Amendment rights. So we need to pardon those people, and we need to stop funding abortion through the administrative state. There are a lot of steps that he can take immediately on day one in those first few months that can undo a lot of this harm. And then more long term, looking at the solution of a national minimum protection, protecting babies by at least 15 weeks when they can feel pain, so that babies in California are not subject to late term abortion, just like they aren't subject in Texas or Florida and other states right now.
Oh Lord, break our hearts for what breaks yours and help us to follow you. Kelsey, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us what's been going on, what happened during the election, and what we can do as we continue to seek Him first, His kingdom and His righteousness, where Matthew 6 would tell us to go, and not even, as you say, it's part of the process, it's part of the means, certainly to be part of the political process, but even more so to be on our knees interceding and asking the Lord, how can I be part of what is important to you? Kelsey Pritchard, State Public Affairs Director of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, our +1 today. And will you join us on Don and Steve Plus and be our other +1?